Multi-streaming. This will be fun.
Going broadcast
Oh yeah.
style, eh?
Hey, you know how it goes. We got to have a little bit of fun in here, right? All right, I
Yeah.
see us on YouTube. Do I see us on LinkedIn? I think I see us on LinkedIn. Maybe. Go live. See, this is the fun thing of where I've never done this before, so... Nope, it does not appear that it is working on LinkedIn, so it's going to give me just a few minutes. But while I'm doing that, we are live on YouTube. We are hanging out with Andrew of 3D Gloop. Sir, you don't need much of an introduction, but I want you to, because everyone knows who you are, and if they don't, they're going to know by the end of this. But give us the Backstreet Boys, the who you are, the where you from, the what you did, and as long as you love me.
Alrighty, well, I'm Andrew Mayhall. I'm one of the co-founders of 3D Gloop. I could say one of the creative minds behind it. The other Andrew is unfortunately a little busy. Yeah, we make specialty adhesives and coatings for additive manufacturing, 3D printing. It's called Gloop. You gloop things together with our product, and they'll never come apart, right?
Yep. That's really true. And you've got quite a background, don't you?
Yeah. I've done quite a bit. This is we still operate Gloop as a startup, right? Very hungry for growth. But this is not my first startup. I actually had another startup in kind of computer server hardware technology space beforehand, and raised about $2.5 million in private equity. Built out a really awesome team, developed some really cool technology, and then unfortunately, things just kind of deteriorated. Investors wanted to go different directions, different managers wanted to go another way. I got kind of caught in between, and I was just like, you know what, this is no longer for me anymore. This is like a job, and I wanted to be someone building something, not working for someone else.
Right.
So that led me on to just keep moving forward, I guess, and figuring out what I wanted to do next. And somewhere along the way, I ended up doing this.
And so can you talk about that previous startup kind of before Gloop came along?
Sure. Yeah. So the previous startup that I had, we were developing server technology. So this is think big data centers, Facebook, Google, that sort of stuff. The startup centered around thermal dissipation, basically thermal management products. So in my days at college, I was doing mechanical engineering and electrical and computer engineering, and I was always fascinated by IT infrastructure. And right around that time, the big word was cloud computing, cloud this, cloud that. Everything was like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be based in the cloud, right? And so one of those conversations were about the server platforms that run the cloud. And me being an engineer of sorts, right, at the time, I wanted to explore this infrastructure, and I found that a lot of times, there were a lot of design considerations made around how do you dissipate large amounts of energy in small form factors. You have these computer racks, they'd have 40, 50, 60 computers depending on the size, and they'd be generating 8,000 to 12,000 kilowatts of heat output. And you have a data center that's got 500 racks. Well, that's a lot of power.
Yep.
How do you deal with that? And so that's kind of what started my I guess investigation into thermal technology. And at the time, it was just me exploring, learning, seeing how they did this, like heat management, and it was all very rudimentary, right? Heat sinks, which are just big chunks of aluminum and some fins, and you blow air across them. And I said, well, obviously there's some engineering behind it, but I feel like there's still a lot of performance left on the table. And so that led me down a path of investigating and exploring and learning about fluid dynamics. And so I picked up some of those courses, and I actually developed a very particular type of airflow that I went on to patent and went through that whole process and built out a heatsink technology that was capable of basically reducing the form factor of the heat sinks by around 30 to 35%, while keeping the same, thermal resistance, if you will.
Wow.
Which was really cool and exciting. And we reduced the back pressure on these heat sinks. I don't want to get into too much of the technical details, but the short of it was we reduced the back pressure, we decreased the size, we made it a little bit more efficient. So we were able to start working with some really cool big names, like Intel and Asetek on kind of bringing about this, new kind of technology. Eventually, we ended up working with, Emerson Electric, developing a sort of data center level heat exchanger. So this was, instead of working on the server platforms themselves, let's scale it up. Let's talk about big heat exchangers, the devices that are removing the heat from the air. And so that's where things started to get a really little dicey, because I wanted to go and pursue and turn the company into more of an energy company instead of a product company, and the investors wanted to be a product company. I wanted to develop intellectual property and license it out and turn it into kind of a powerhouse of design. And I call it an energy company focused on energy savings and green credits, that sort of stuff. And they wanted to develop products. So unfortunately, there's where things started getting kind of crazy. I decided that it was no longer for me. So I just kind of turned it over and said, you guys do with it what you want, basically, after a lot of fighting back and forth and being ousted as the CEO and kind of the general startup stuff, right?
Wow.
So
yeah, that's
sorry for that long explanation, but
well, no, this stuff is, well, kind of important, right? Because it's not just about the massive success that you've gotten to, it's about the journey that it took for you to get there, right? What is it that 80% of small businesses fail within their first 5 years. And I think the last couple of years have kind of added a +5 modifier to that. But for Gloop specifically, you guys have had a bit of better luck than, well, myself and other small businesses out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, Gloop's been great. The success that we've seen, we literally we cannot thank this awesome 3D printing community enough. It really kind of just stems from them opening up and just being excited to try something new, and just continuing to give us a shot and proving ourselves out. It's been amazing. It's not been all uphill, right? There's been some challenges here and there, like every business faces.
Of course.
But I think what's interesting is my experience and kind of the private equity backed startup has given me a unique perspective, right? Doing Gloop has been bootstrapped. We've been building the company off of the proceeds that we generate without any money really invested. We had some seed money from ourselves, but other than that, we haven't taken any equity investment. Not really anything friends or family. We have won some really awesome awards and accolades, but again, those weren't really required to get us to where we are today. So it's really interesting when we start diving into the story. So,
and your background is pretty broad, right? You're an expert in mechanical, computer, electrical, and chemical engineering, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not one for really talking about myself too much. I guess you could say maybe expert. I just like to say I'm a guy who likes to dabble in a lot of things. I think the best term is kind of still like that old archaic term of polymath, right? I love challenging myself to learn, just things that will probably have no business even learning. But I have to know, right? And it's like an itch that you can never satisfyly scratch. For me, I started in kind of computer programming, computer engineering. That's where, it was a lot of fun. Now, with that said, computer programming, software engineering, development, It's a lot of math-based algorithms, that sort of stuff. And I really took a liking to that. And it was fun to do this. And I remember, like back in the day going through school, where we would develop sorting algorithms, right? Or re-implement just generic sorting algorithms, and just how much fun it was. And, it's like, well, the math is pretty simple, at least to me. So I want to explore this. So I started looking into math. And then from there, it led me down, kind of mechanical engineering, because mechanical engineering is like this harmony of math and physics. And so then it was like, well, wait a second, physics, this is also really cool, because, physics is just this, these conceptual ideas, but also with a lot of math. And, what was, I guess, kind of the aha moment was like when I got into material sciences, where it was kind of a marriage of everything. So we're talking mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, mathematics. It literally is the building blocks. Chemistry is like the building blocks of everything.
Oh yeah.
And so that was where it was like, wow, this is cool. This is where things really resonated for me. It just, I couldn't stop myself from going and doing all of these things at once. Right. But I know a lot about a lot of things. I'm absolutely certain there are so many people out there that are way smarter than me, but I love to learn. And I think that if anyone is willing to learn, the things that you're able to accomplish are just endless, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Infinite potential within yourself if you believe it, right?
And that's absolutely true, right? We kind of have to believe in ourselves, and I think that's really the biggest issue with some small business owners, is that they may not put enough faith in themselves to get it through the day, right? It is
Yep.
it is challenging, to say the least, right?
It is very challenging. A good friend Pooch, Alan from Repcord, and we have these talks all the time, about owning and operating our small businesses, and a lot of it just comes down to, getting yourself into the thick of it and just working through it. There are going to be some challenges. There are going to be some really, hard and nasty and hairy problems you got to deal with, but it all comes down to, one, your mentality and how you deal with those things, and two, just understanding like this is an opportunity to learn. Even if you're failing, even if it's not going to work, this is something that you can draw on moving forward for the rest of your life. And
Yep.
when this problem presents itself again, because it will, it's usually just in a slightly different form, you're going to be able to recognize it, and you're going to be able to make different choices. And so believing in yourself at the get-go, that you have the persistence to move forward, I think is really, it's huge, right? It's kind of the end all solution, and it's a little cliche, right? Saying
A
we'll
little
just
bit.
keep moving forward, but that's it. You have to keep moving forward, at all costs.
It's absolutely true. Now, I have to ask, because you're in all these engineerings, right?
Yeah.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh, it really, it's hard, right? Because it kind of goes back and forth. Mechanical engineering for me is a lot of fun, especially when you start adding on and layering on additive manufacturing and the 3D printing, right?
Right.
You have this ability to think through, for instance, these problems that you're trying to solve, whether it be designing a car or designing a widget, right? Just something. There's always some sort of effort that you're designing to, whether it's a cost reduction, whether it's a strength, whatever it might be, and then optimizing around it. And then you layer on kind of the rapid prototyping capabilities of additive manufacturing. That's where things get really exciting, right?
Oh yeah.
And then right, if we go a little bit further, well, let's talk about additive manufacturing, 3D printing. we're dealing with, machines that were once again designed, through mechanical engineering, but also now we're dealing with chemistry, and we're also dealing with software. Like, in order to take something that you've designed in the computer and convert it into the instructions, right, to print out on a a machine that's melting polymers, right? It's kind of this marriage of everything that I was just talking about, right? Of physics, of chemistry, of computer and electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. It's literally everything all combined.
Yep.
And on top of it, there's also art, right? Which is a whole different topic all in general.
It's true.
So it's hard for me to say which one's my favorite, because they all play a very important role in my life. If I had to narrow it down, I would say that chemistry is one of my top ones, and
Okay.
material engineering, that sort of stuff, and then followed that very closely by mechanical engineering, because again, I think those two are so harmonious together. If you understand the materials, the material science, you can understand how to engineer with those, and then you can build further from there.
Absolutely. And so where did Gloop kind of come from, right? I mean, those of us that have been in the
Hmm.
industry long enough kind of know the carrier's methylene chloride. It's right on the bottle,
Hmm.
so I'm not giving away
Yep.
anything secret, right?
Nope.
I've got my nano Gloop here, which this little tiny bottle, and these are like what, $10 basically?
Those are like $5. Yeah.
Are they really like five
Yep.
bucks?
Those are $5.
This converted me. And I know Jordan and Bob are going to get mad at me if I don't give them a shout out, because they've told me, you need to use Gloop, you need to use. I have a gallon of methylene chloride sitting here. It's about a half gallon now because it vaporizes quickly. But, this stuff is truly different. And it's different in all the right ways. So talk to me about how, because like you went from a startup that had nothing to do with this into a chemical-based startup in the 3D printing industry, which is a lot of people, when they talk about chemical-based startups, they're thinking of filament, resin, something like that, right? Consumer grade polymers or photopolymers.
Yep.
You decided that you're gonna go a little hard in the paint and go for and we talked about this before the show, and I forget the name. It's not an adhesive. It's not a solvent. It's a solvent-laden adhesive or something like that.
It's solvent-borne adhesive. Solvent-borne. Yep. Yeah. So it was really interesting, right? So to understand the start of Gloop, I need to rewind a bit again back to my days as kind of developing these thermal dissipation, heat sink technology products. As a part of that, we were designing server platforms, and with everything, right? Injection molded parts are kind of the norm in mass produced, items.
Oh yeah.
But in order to get to injection molded parts, you have to prototype. You're not going to spend $20,000-$30,000 on a mold, right? To then, find out, oh, hey, it doesn't work. You need to move this part over 2 millimeters, and
people definitely have. They don't anymore.
They have, right? But today, that's not the right way to do it, or I should say the most effective way to do it. I guess there's no right and wrong way. But so we had 3D printers in house. We had some commercial ones, photopolymer, Stratus kind of level machines. We also had, some desktop level machines too. I remember getting into 3D printing. I ordered my first Thingomatic, I think, sometime in 2011, 2012. School. Yeah, and then I ordered my first replicator, I think, sometime 2013, give or take. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact dates, but I was always really interested in that sort of stuff, and we had always used it as a part of our development process. And as I progressed through the levels, I call it, of engineering, I eventually kind of got away from it again. My startup, once I raised a bunch of money, it was more so now I was kind of directing, right? I was the CEO. I was delegating. I wasn't really doing a lot of engineering. I was, but most of it was still delegating.
Right.
And so fast forward a bit more. My best friends, I've known him for years, grew up like right next door to me. He was also an engineer. We always had like this healthy competition between us where we would build something or make something and we'd share it with each other. Then we'd want to build it better.
Having packet loss problems. I'm like, it'll be fine for
Oh
the live
no.
stream. Nope.
Yeah.
Wasn't fine for the live stream. Sorry everyone. Yeah, it's there's a lot of construction going around us out here. They're putting 10,000 homes in a 5-mile radius around us,
Oh,
and that
that's a lot of
means
homes.
that the line there's more. I want to say there's more BS in the lines, but I know that's not like the right term. There's more interference in the lines, and because
The internet is a series of tubes.
it is, and we are not pure fiber, which means
Okay.
that we are more susceptible to problems in the line itself. So I apologize. Sorry about that.
But yeah, so kind of to reiterate, right? A good friend, best friend, we always had this healthy competition between us where, one would build something and they'd share it with the other, right? Like I'd build something and share it with him, and he'd like, oh yeah, and then he'd have to build something better, right? And it was always back and forth. Unfortunately, though, what ended up happening is that his dog eventually kind of got leukemia, bone cancer, if you will. And it was no good. And that was kind of what spurred him to buy his own personal 3D printer. Now, mind you, I had kind of been out of the hobby for quite some time. But when he bought his and he started playing around with it, it got, me like reinterested, right? Because again, my early days with desktop 3D printers were kind of the Thingomatic and Replicator, printing ABS plastic that was very finicky and never wanted to work right.
Right.
And then my other experience was with photopolymer resins. So again, those hadn't made an emergence in desktop, form at this point in time, back 4 years ago, give or take. There were a few, several $1,000 machines, but anyways, point is that his dog kind of spurred him to get a 3D printer because he wanted to build kind of this wheelchair for her, because none of the wheelchairs that were available really worked well, and he didn't want to invest several $1,000s to have someone professionally make one because he knew that her time was limited. So he wanted to try and give her the best possible experience while she was here, but
Of
also at the
course.
same time kind of build something that was cheaper than he could just buy. And so he was having some issues, and was printing out of, I think it was PLA, and he was using epoxies and cyanoacrylates, and he was like, man, I can't get this stuff to bond. And so I told him, I'm like, well, hey, we could try solvent welding it. But I'm like, maybe there's something else that we can do here. Let me do some research and kind of dive into the materials. And so that's where kind of it started the whole process of me doing research and trying to figure out, well, wait, like, is this really a problem? In the industry, like, I'm sure there's someone that makes an adhesive for this type of plastic. It seems like there's plastic specific adhesives everywhere. And it was at that moment that I realized that no, most adhesives, even commercial adhesives, they focus on, like, oh, it can bond to everything, but it doesn't bond to one specific thing. There might be some cyanoacrylates that are tuned to bond to glass or to bond to, metals or whatever, but or polyurethane glues that kind of do similar things, but nothing was specific for a very particular type of material. That's what I was
Right.
finding.
Right.
And so that was where I was like, well, wait a second, there might be something here to explore a little bit more. And then in the plastic space, right, there are so many different polymers out there, and plastics are notoriously hard to glue together, right? If you know the material of the plastic, you can try and solvent weld it, right? Some plastics are capable of being solvent welded fairly easily. Others you have to use like chlorinated solvents where it's a little harder to do, but it can still be done. And that was that aha moment that I was like, well, maybe we can actually engineer an adhesive. And so if you don't know how adhesives work. There's a couple different properties of them, but generally speaking, it's about the structure of the polymer itself, right? An
Right.
adhesive is just a polymer. And it could be a protein if it's a biological adhesive. But these are chemical compounds that have what they call functional groups. These are, the ends of the polymers or the ends of the proteins. They have a very particular structure that is, you know, easier to bond to other, atoms, molecules, if you will, on a macroscopic level. And so, if you understand essentially the basis of, okay, these are the two materials that I have, material A and material B,
Right.
I want to make for sure they connect together, right? You can pretty quickly design essentially like a Lego, right, that plugs into each other and you form a really strong adhesive. And so that's what we did. So what we did was we took PLA, we synthesized it ourselves at first, literally starting from raw materials, and we started figuring out ways in which to add functional groups to them. So that once it was applied, it would actually form a chemical bond to the base polymers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it took us months, but eventually we were able to get a formula that worked fairly well. And that was the first iteration of Gloop. And we thought, hey, like this is cool. We're going to turn it into something. We think it might be a little side hobby, but hey, maybe we can launch a Kickstarter. And
Okay.
that's what we did.
And that apparently worked quite well, right?
Yeah. So we did a Kickstarter. At first, it wasn't really taken off because we were really focused on trying to bond PLA and, well, at the time ABS to build platforms, because we thought, hey, bed adhesion is still an issue, right? But we also still wanted to make for sure that we could bond PLA to PLA, ABS to PLA, ABS to ABS, all the combinations thereof. It was around the time when, I think it was about 2 weeks in to the Kickstarter. We're like, well, hey, this probably isn't going to work. We kind of knew going into it that it probably really wasn't going to work. But at the same time, we wanted to give it a shot. And that was where we actually heard of EARF, the East Coast Rep Rap Festival. It was the inaugural EARF. And we're like, well, hey, like this is right before our Kickstarter ends. It was literally on the other Andrew's birthday.
Oh, gosh.
It was like June 23rd, I think it was the first inaugural EARF. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to pack up. We're based in St. Louis. We're going to drive the 16 hours to go to EARF and, just talk about our company and whatnot. And I remember packing up my car at the time, and it was the night before. So it was like Thursday at like, I guess it was Wednesday night, Thursday morning, midnight, 1:00 in the morning, something like that. We drove all night through until the next day, and then got to EARF roughly. I think it was, it was just before opening on that Friday, right? To get set up and get everything going. And along the way, my car's headlights burned out. So we had to keep driving, in the middle of the night. I had no headlights, but we're like, hey, because no place was open.
Well, that's EARF, so that's Goshen, Indiana. Ain't nothing there anyways. You might hit a deer.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, we keep going. I mean, we had running lights, but we ended up going there, and at the time we had also invested a lot of money into getting the product kind of developed. And then we both at the time didn't actually have jobs. I had just turned down a very lucrative job offer for a molding company, so making injection molds, because I wanted to kind of go and see this thing through. I wanted to see, hey, maybe the Kickstarter would turn into something.
Right.
I had a feeling that I was like, I want to see this through. Maybe I can come back, maybe not. The other Andrew just got a job offer for a defense contractor, a really large one. But he wasn't actually actively employed. So I remember driving there. We were putting money on the credit cards, that sort of stuff. We get the crappiest hotel room. And then we go to EARF and we were presenting, and literally that night, it overfunded, right? And we're like, wow, this is cool. And the resonance of the community were like, hey, what you're doing is really awesome. At the time, I don't even think Slice Engineering had launched yet either, because Dan was on the booth next to us. And there's a GIF on our website of me and Dan having a tug of war competition, essentially, with handles that we had glued together, quite literally just hours before that. And we're just playing tug of war, just trying to fight, and it was a fun time. Like, it's a crazy story.
I gotta get Dan as a future guest. I should reach out to him. Of course, he's relatively local to me. I think he's up in Gainesville, right?
Yeah, I think
don't
so.
know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're in Gainesville. But it's something that I did notice about this. So I've used raw methylene chloride since before Gloop existed. So in my personal defense, I was on this kick well before you all. But so I'd never tried it until recently, and I will tell you, if you are trying to strip the paint off of a cutting mat, spill this on your cutting mat. Not that that's the reason there's a Victoria sticker on one of our sets. I definitely didn't spill half of this nano Gloop bottle. But and then I tried to wipe it off, thinking, oh, it's gonna wipe right. No, dumbass, don't do that. But the thing about raw methylene chloride that I don't like, that I don't have here, is sometimes it just turns the plastic into mush. It doesn't actually re-solidify and create a bond. And I don't know why this occurs. It could be for a really dumb reason. But it doesn't happen with Gloop.
Well, yeah, because Gloop isn't just a solvent, right? It's an adhesive. It's absolutely. We have customers, fairly recently, or I'm sorry, fairly frequently reach out, just like, oh, well, what's different than the Weld-On series of products, which are mostly just, again, methylene.
Yeah, the
chloride,
Weld-On,
right?
I think it's number 4 is methylene chloride.
Yeah, and then you got 16, which is just PMMA mixed with DCM. It's just a thicker version, right? Yeah, so they were asking all the time, what's the difference? It's like, well, our adhesive is an engineered adhesive. Like, we design it to specifically bond to this particular type of plastic. Yes, our adhesive uses a chlorinated solvent. Right now, there's actually some really cool stuff that we're doing that we might. Yeah.
Some things you can talk about, or some things you're going to keep close to the chest on this one?
So
it is live. We can't edit this.
Yeah, no. If things go correctly, right? Maybe by Earth of this year, you might see a new product line that completely eliminates all of those chlorinated solvents. Because again, so one of the cool things that we've done with Gloop is it's been bootstrapped, right? So yeah. I mentioned that we grow and build the company based on its proceeds. But as a part of that, we're constantly iterating the formula. The Gloop that you buy today is not the same Gloop that we launched with. And we didn't make a big splash like, oh, hey, we're changing our formula. We've changed our formula tons of times. And the reason why is we're getting better at making these polymers. We're getting better at making these adhesives.
Well, and that's also a really good, that's a good point for business in general, right? Because I want to give a shout out as well, because you and Pooch have just started doing your live streams off of Twitter Spaces. Thank you. And put them on YouTube. Also, thank you. Because they're way better. YouTube is such a better platform than Twitter for this. I'm sorry, it is. Yep. I know that Twitter lets you bring people up and then you can kick them out. YouTube, I know it's more complicated, but it's a better platform for people to listen to. But you guys have a podcast called Maker That Money. First off, phenomenal name, and I'm a little pissed at that. That name is so good.
Well, that's all Pooch.
you guys talk about some of those hard business topics that other people won't talk about, and iteration is something that very few businesses talk about, right? Where if you're not looking at what's working and what isn't, and being able to modify that, you're a hobbyist, right? If you're not looking at your formula and saying, this shit isn't working, how do we fix it and make it work? Then, well, it's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Yeah,
absolutely.
I hate when people say that, because you can get different results.
You absolutely can. And, for us, we have when we started the company, we always wanted to put the customer first, right? And in a way where, it's like, hey, listen, the customer base, like everything, this is the reason why we exist. But also at the same time, we understood, like, as a business, right, we have to make money, but also like we want to be able to deliver the highest quality products that we possibly can. And so we are really hypercritical on ourselves on a lot of areas of our product. Like, hey, this specific piece isn't working correctly. What do we need to do to solve that piece?
Right.
And usually that leads us down a rabbit hole, right? Of, well, if we do this, then it changes this aspect, and then it causes this whole, pile on of messes and everything else. But we always knew, kind of going into this, that we were going to, it kind of, in essence, experiment on the customers, but do so in a way that we hoped to give them better quality products. And we're kind of slow to move. So we launched ABS and PLA at when we did our Kickstarter, and then about a year later, we launched our PET product. Now, we haven't launched a new product since. We've tried doing some aerosols and some spray paints, right? Where we had developed some new polymers, but we're like, okay, well, wait, we're going to hold off on that, because we knew going into it was going to be really difficult to get the funding required. It was more so us just trying to test the water. But at the same time, again, we were trying to iterate all of our current formulas and make them better in every possible way. And so again, the PLA Gloop that you get today, it's not the same that you got, I think the last revision was like 5 months ago. Whoa. And that's not the same as, several months before that. It's something that we're constantly tweaking. We're constantly trying to fine tune. And I'm pretty excited for the future of, our entire, lineup, because we're, doing some really awesome things in the background that I wish I could share. I wish I could show, but it's like, well, a lot of things we can't, because, it's intellectual property, yep, business, that sort of stuff. But at some point, right, we hope to really, like, I tell Pooch this all the time. Like, I want Gloop to kind of be an empire of sticky, right? I want to really make Gloop synonymous with the word sticky. But also at the same, sort of, but not really. It's one of those things where I want to continue expanding, right, to include other, awesome polymers, like some of the ones we're working on, TPU. We're also working on nylons. Those are really exciting.
Back up a minute. You're working on an adhesive for nylon?
Oh yeah. We've had
sticks to nylon, good sir.
We've had a nylon based adhesive for about a year now. And it has worked okay in the lab, but there's some issues with it still, and it's not something we're ready to really talk about too much, other than it's in development, right? So hopefully at some point in the future, you can see that. And we have some really cool things, like I mentioned, or kind of teased, greener. We're going to call them greener, more user friendly.
But I like the formulas. Logo. You going to make it green for the bottle?
No.
Come
Purple's
on,
here to
that
stay.
would be funny. So what you're telling me is I should stop using this, buy another one, and then, like, buy them every so often, have a collection, bond together with measured amounts, and do a video and see, all right, how much better has it gotten? Although that seems more like something Stefan would do than I would do, but that's fine.
Probably, yeah. I mean, you could absolutely do that. We will say that the bond strength hasn't really increased that much. Mm-hmm. In some cases, the bond strength has actually gone down a little bit, because we've adjusted things to make it a little bit more user friendly. Like, there was one iteration where we noticed that customers were having issues where they weren't bonding correctly. And if it wasn't bonding correctly, then, it's like, okay, they were taking too long to apply it or something else. So we needed to tweak the formula a little bit to get that better. So, it's always a trade-off, right? You can't have everything all in the same formula. So it's always tweaking this or that.
And that's absolutely accurate, right? That constant tweaking is kind of what makes it a long-term business for you, rather than we got a formula, let's go, not looking at anybody. that does that. 3D systems. You know, your deltas are north of 10 on color. Get it the frig together. But you know,
Yep.
adhesives are something that a lot of us have dealt with, right? I would guess that
Mhm.
every maker, and because I can say that, has a tube of super glue
Mhm.
somewhere on their desk, right? They might even
Yep.
have a few because some of them are glued shut, and they're telling themselves, I will get it open and I'll just cut the tip down one day, all right? You're not going to, just
Mhm.
please throw it away. You know, and we've all messed with the liquid versus the gel versus, and that is the one thing I do like about Gloop, that it's, because raw methylene chloride is, its centipoise is
It's
real thin. It's less than
it's
water.
very thin. It's very, very messy.
Yeah. And it works. But if you're
Mhm.
trying to do a bit of gap fill, you can't do
Mhm.
that. And with Gloop being, well, gloopy,
Yep.
it tends to stick where you put it. And a great example, we were, for those that, we have a YouTube channel. Hi, yes, a lot of you know this by now. You should like and subscribe. But that the video that we did for the speaker was supposed to also include the full build, but that full build was like an
Mhm.
hour long. We decided we're going to put that on Patreon. We'll show a quick little clip of it in the main video. But I did not use the glue that came with that speaker kit from Paul Ellis, the Polymate speaker. He
Mhm.
included a PVA based wood glue, basically. I said,
Sure.
no, I'm not going to use that. And I used Gloop. I used methylene chloride where it made sense. I needed to wick into the spider to, that's TPU
Sure.
to PLA, which methylene chloride does do. It's just not very good at it. I
Mhm.
didn't have great luck with Gloop when I tried off camera, so we didn't bother trying it on camera. But the main
Mhm.
basket, all the PETG parts were all held together. It's PLA Gloop, but it works. Uh, and it
It
sticks.
does.
Yeah, cause it's methylene chloride. It sticks like a
Mhm.
hot damn, and that is going to be an upcoming video where I got to get some other bottles from you. But I want to compare PLA to PETG. Try,
Mhm.
flip the chemical between the two, and
Mhm.
really see. All right, are we seeing that much of a difference? Does it make sense to get some of both? And so that we kind of get a better understanding of the industry, because you guys have direct formulas for both, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. So it's actually interesting, right? So PETG is one of those polymers that there's actually many different ways that it can be polymerized, but also, right? So the glycol addition, there's a lot of byproducts that happen. There's also a level of oxidation that happens
Yep.
when you're actually extruding it, and then when you re-extrude it inside your printer, the temperature really depends on or I should say the bond strength of our PET glue really depends on the temperature that you extrude it with, the total oxidation state. For one, even the polymer or the manufacturer of said polymer.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And the
so
color that they
there's a
use too
lot
is a
of
big deal.
variation with PETG. So our formula for PETG is it is tuned for PET. PETG products, right? Yes, PLA will work. What you're doing there is just solvent welding.
Yeah, you're
Our
just solvent
functional
welding.
group, so the PLA won't actually bond to it, right? And
Nope.
what you actually will see is, and we actually sent this out to a lab and had some really cool testing done, that it will bond, and it will bond pretty much stronger than any other adhesive, but when the bond does break, it will break at the bond joint itself. And it's usually a cleavage of where the PLA interfaces with the PETG. So you can solvent weld with our PLA gloop. It does work. Our PET gloop it depends again on a lot of different factors, can provide bonds that are stronger than just the PLA gloop and solvent weld. Typically speaking, it does. It depends on a lot of different factors. So that's why there's a PET gloop variant.
Yeah.
This way, we're not saying, okay, hey, use our PLA gloop for everything. That's not what we want. We wanted a plastic specific adhesive. So,
And I like that, right? Because methylene chloride bonds straight PLA. It doesn't do
mhm,
great on silk, and especially polyalchemy elixir. That stuff
mhm,
is really picky.
mhm,
But Gloop did such a better job. Like when
mhm,
like we built that Polymate speaker and it hangs. and
Mm-hmm.
the base and the arm is all elixir because I didn't think.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I had some scrap elixir. Let me try bonding it together with methylene chloride. Let me try super glue. Let me try Gloop. Gloop held the best, but Gloop took the longest to cure. So I said, all right, I'm going to do it this way. Little bit of Gloop, a dab of super glue. No more Gloop, super glue. And so super glue bonded instantly, right? It's like using brad nails and wood glue, right? The nails are just there to hold it together until the wood glue dries. That's exactly what we were doing here. We use the super glue to do a quick tack while we let the Gloop dry. And that thing has been 6 different live events and has worked flawlessly. I built it for a Synapse Summit, which occurred here in Florida. Over 5,000 people attended, and it was literally playing all day. And that thing was held together by Gloop.
Awesome.
Right? All the hard bonds, like when I had good surface-to-surface contact, was all 3D Gloop. And when I had low surface-surface contact, I utilized the fact that I have methylene chloride on hand to do it. Because, well, the brushes and me, I'm not a painter, so it's what's going to go all over the place. And of course, when you hit silk with Gloop, it dulls it, right?
It does.
That's normal. That's expected, because that's part of that process. So I want to be very, very precise. And yeah, we were talking. I don't know if we talked about it on camera, but we were talking about some of the syringe stuff that you guys are working on. And, I metered amounts of product placed in certain ways is something that I would love to see, and I'm glad that that's coming through those pipes for you all. But Gloop also went through some challenges early on, not just, you know, kind of dealing with what bootstrapping means and what it looks like, but you also had some pretty good success at the Metro East Startup Challenge, right?
Yeah. So, you know, it's really cool, right? So the Metro East Startup Challenge was a fairly recent thing. It's pretty local here to where we are. So we're in kind of St. Louis, Missouri area. Specifically, we're in Edwardsville, Illinois.
Okay.
And they are very prominent growing town. We're a college town. We got a pretty nice university, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. It's where, you know, Andrew went to school. I took some classes, eventually dropped out from, you know, a little bit of a black sheep there, but hey. But yeah, so we being a startup, they SIUE and kind of the community members and kind of council put on this annual competition for startup and small businesses to basically pitch their business plans and what they're doing, and you know, all of this other fun stuff, right? And the competition, it gives away I think it was $22,000 in prizes, a $10,000 first prize, and you know, I can't remember all of the other prizes there, but for us it was like, hey, we should just do this, just see what happens. You know, we're local, we're a startup, we fit all the criteria. Let's just put our application in, go through the motion, build the business plan. It's stuff that we needed to do as a business.
Right.
You know, most businesses, they don't actually formalize a plan. They don't do anything. They just kind of run by the seat of their pants, right? And that could work, right? And it worked for us for years. But what this competition, we saw it as, was a way to really solidify basically ourselves as a business, formulate a plan, figure out a strategy, figure out all of this other stuff that we had just been going on a whim, right?
Right.
And we ended up winning first place in the pitch competition, which was really cool. So that was part of it. It was like a $400 first place prize, which was awesome. And then, you know, that was about halfway through. And again, we keep going through these motions. And at the end of it, we ended up winning the grand prize. It came with $10,000 of equity free money, which was amazing.
That's great money. Damn.
It was.
It's a check for 10 G's. Nice.
It was. And well, what's even crazier is that about 6-8 months before that, we actually went through a very similar kind of program. It was called Arch Grants. This one is a global startup competition. Again, it's based here in St. Louis, but they have applicants from all over the world. And the idea is that you have a startup. It's supposed to be high growth or high growth potential. And so we're not talking about restaurants or, sort of local
Right.
businesses. They wanted to reach, large, thresholds. But they do this competition where you put in essentially like what would be very basic rudimentary building blocks for business plan. And also you go through, you build a pitch deck, and then you pitch live in front of their judges.
Okay.
So about 6 or 8 months before that, we ended up going through that program and we ended up winning. We were one of 18 startups selected, and that came with $50,000 of equity free money, distributed over the course of a year. But again, so like this was amazing for us, right? As a bootstrap company that we're actively not trying to seek investment. We wanted to make for sure that the company was healthy and running on its own profits, but now we had in the course of less than a year, $60,000 to play with, to really kind of expand and grow this thing. And so that went into a whole
That's
slew
business
of really
changing
cool
money.
things.
Like
It
in the
is.
beginning, like that, what was probably the most beneficial purchase out of that 60 grand?
So it's probably something that no one even sees yet. Well, I know no one sees it yet, and it's a big risk for us. But we went through the whole process of rebuilding a website from the ground up. And now a lot of people are like, what? Why are you rebuilding a website? And here's the reason why. For us, right, and most adhesive companies out there in the world, you don't survive on patents. You don't patent formulas because chemical and physics, they don't change. What
Well,
you
and
do
patenting it
is you
just
keep
allows people to copy it. It's better to
well,
keep it as
yeah,
a trade secret.
it's better to keep it as a trade secret.
Yep.
And so also on top of that, it really is, it's down to branding, and it's down to your image as a company and everything else. And so we invested heavily in branding and a new website, and basically new product labels, new everything, and building out essentially a roadmap for our products.
New
And
labels.
so new labels, new lots of really cool things. And so that's coming here, very, very soon.
Soon
And
TM.
that
All
was,
right. That's my favorite.
yep. Well, so the thing is we want to make a big deal about it because it is us growing up, right? So we have kind of done this entire thing just again on a whim, us doing this, just trying to figure out what works, right? I think we found that formula, right?
Right.
Pun intended there. And now it's working, and we are growing up. We're going from a startup to a company, right? We're still going to keep operating as a startup, but this is where we're really going to start professionalizing, working on a lot of other really awesome things, building out the product line. So we're going to run as fast as possible. So the first big investment that we made was the website, the branding, all of that. Shipping adhesives is hard
It is
also,
very
and so
hard.
that's also why we had to invest so much in kind of a website, because nothing out there works for us. Like, I can get into it, but it's ridiculous. Like, we're talking about prime factorization for weights so that I can then use a lookup table for it's a nightmare.
I always wanted to
Yeah.
do a deep like business podcast, and I'm like, Pooch would be the great person to do that with me. Then he started one with you. I'm like, oh, what the hell? I'll just listen to it. Because like
but yeah,
my experiences with shipping are like, buying shares of stock so I can go to shareholder meetings and say, look, y'all screwed my business, and then watch their stock price tumble. It's not using lookup tables and prime factorization to figure out weights, because everything that we do is custom.
mm-hmm,
And I will say the presentation of this is beautiful, right? I love the dark brown bottles. They're
mm-hmm,
glass. You've got
mm-hmm.
the applicator built right into it, and the applicator not only touches the bottom, but spreads out when it hits the bottom. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Because companies that don't have the damn applicators touch the bottom, it's like, yeah, you end up looking like an idiot trying to get the damn whatever it is out of the bottle. I'm looking at
Yep.
you, PVC glue companies. You all also know we're never going to use it in time. It's going to end up drying, but come on, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bottle
Yep.
seals really well, because if it didn't,
Yep.
mine would be dry by now.
Yep.
And the label is simple, but it's really
Yep.
pretty, right? It's a nice kind of, it's a good full color label, and it's applied
Yep.
really well. And these are all things that say they're nowhere near as much of a startup as they think they are, right? This is a really cool product, and you all have been taken to Twitter recently and to social media in a really cool way. You've been doing some really awesome social media stuff, where you made the snow gloops, and then you figured out how much snow did we have. We measured it in cans of gloop.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Like the snow, we called it the snowpocalypse, right? We were supposed to get like 12 to 16 inches of snow. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm over here in Florida saying it's like 85 degrees. It's gonna suck. It's 86 currently, 28 degrees centigrade, which that definitely doesn't convert, right? Either Google or Microsoft is wrong. Google tells me it's 86. Microsoft says it's 28C. So somebody's wrong because that conversion's not accurate. But Gloop has held together a fair bit of projects for us, and I look at it and say I didn't know about you guys for a long time. When I found out about you, I'm like, let me burn through my methylene, let me burn through my inventory then. And it came in an Alien 3D UFO box. And if you're a maker, a tinkerer out there, and you want a cool project that's not KiwiCo, the Alien 3D box is pretty damn good. And it came with a freaking bottle of nano gloop. This is how I got this stuff. And I used it once and I was a convert. Like, right there. No one's paying me to say this. It's that freaking good. And I like that you're going toward green because methylene chloride is not legal in some states right now. Hilariously, Gloop does ship to those states, but methylene chloride, whatever.
So how it works is that it's an adhesive and it's required for that formula to work, and so we can actually get exceptions. So there's actually a lot of like overhead and legal stuff that we've had to deal with. Like I said, shipping and all of the other stuff, that's a nightmare. Like going through hazmat training seminars to be certified so that we can ship this stuff. That's oh man.
How boring were those seminars? Let's do a podcast on that. It will have no views.
Yes. So, hazmat, that sort of stuff. And then figuring out, okay, how do we get these exceptions? How do we do this? How do we do that? So most of the time, methylene chloride, right? It's like, it's seen as this really terrible chemical. And, yes, it can be if it's used incorrectly.
Yeah.
But if you're sensible about it, it's just like any other chemical, any other, aerosol, glue, whatever it be. Just respect it and you're going to be fine with it. And for us, again, since we're classified as an adhesive, we can kind of skirt a little bit below the radar in a lot of those areas because most of the time it's regulated on paint strippers, right?
Yeah.
And that's where most people end up hurting themselves, is they'll dump an entire gallon jug in a bathtub in a very tiny bathroom in an enclosed space and then kill themselves because they can't get air, right? I mean, don't be an idiot. That's our slogan. Just
you want to be sticky, just not on your hands. And I'm fairly certain he talked about it in our interview, but I've talked with Sanjay Mortimer about this, where Sanjay actually had plastic in his hands because, and this is why methylene chloride, as far as I'm aware, was generally said, it's bad news bears, because when it melts the polymer, it melts it but does not really increase its viscosity. And that means it can be absorbed subdermal level in humans.
Yes.
And eventually that methylene chloride evaporates through your skin, leaving you with plastic trapped under your skin. And like, that's why the stuff's nasty. It works a treat. And when it's in a system like this, where it's thicker, it's easier to handle. It's not going to this is an old syringe, and like you have to pull really hard because the rubber stopper has expanded, right?
Yep.
It doesn't do that with these bottles, and that's crazy, crazy important. John Stern in the comments asked, does 3D Gloop like or not like humidity?
So yeah, that's actually a really great question. So like most
surgery,
adhesives,
Mitch 3D says, oh God. But yeah, humidity.
Yeah, so most adhesives are susceptible to humidity, right?
Yeah,
And yes, our adhesive is slightly susceptible to humidity. What you'll notice is in a human environment, when applying the adhesive will get a very dull color much quicker than it normally would. It will still get a dull color, but what you'll notice as well is that moisture is one, it will be condensing because the methylene chloride is evaporating, but the we actually have so our adhesive is it's like an isocyanate, so kind of like a cyanoacrylate, but it's a little bit different. But it does require a hydroxide ion in order to start the curing process. And where do you get that? Moisture, humidity
moisture.
from the air.
Yep,
So that's, yes, it will affect it, but it's only subtle because our adhesive is a very slow cure
it is.
adhesive. So
Which
it's not
I
as
like.
bad as some other ones. Yeah.
I really like that because, like, you put something in, you're like, shit, that's not right. You have enough time to pull it apart, and yeah, you're gonna damage the surface, but that's fine.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I will certainly say, like, one of our main sets is in my garage. It is unair conditioned as of
Hmm.
current. Thanks, patrons. Uh, bought an air conditioner with Patreon money. Um, but when we were using it out there versus in here, inside where
Hmm.
it's air conditioned, but it's still kind of damp because it's
Hmm.
Florida. It's
Hmm.
about 85 to 90% ambient humidity outside right now. It's a swamp.
Hmm.
Inside, I'm reading 41. And there's a big difference in what we see specifically. It's like the off gassing. It's where the chemical causes
Hmm.
damage to the part itself, where you can see it work. And I'm guessing
Hmm.
it's kicking faster when it's outside. That's why we see more of it
Hmm.
reacting to the surrounding surfaces.
Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. It is more of it's going to start reacting quicker, and it's just yeah. We always tell people, hey, always try and use it in a conditioned environment if you can. If it has to be outside, you can try cooling down the bottle of Gloop in an ice bath. Right, just get a cup of ice water, put the bottle of Gloop in it, and cool it down for a little bit. That will slow the reaction down a little faster. Works a treat for doing larger surface area. But again, we always recommend, hey, don't be an idiot. Don't cover this thing all over everything. Like, just only apply it where you need it, right? So
So you're saying we shouldn't just put ourselves into a bubble and just sniff gloop?
no, please
No, do not do that.
don't.
Use it in a well ventilated area. If is rest because you know realistically, is respiration required, like some sort of a particulate
so
mask or anything like that?
so legally speaking, right, I'm required to say yes.
Right.
um you know uh, it really comes down to your own level of kind of risk tolerance. Generally speaking, right, as long as you're not able to smell adhesives, that doesn't mean it's not there, but generally speaking, that you're probably okay,
If you can't
right?
smell adhesives, you might want to go get tested.
But yeah, so I mean, there are all other aspects there too, right? But yeah, we always say, again, ventilation, it doesn't hurt, right? It
No.
never hurts to wear a respirator, and the respirator would be kind of, again, a full-on respirator, a chemical filtration respirator, not a mask, not a cotton mask, not anything like that, just a normal PPE respirator. If you're working with your hands, right, and you're covering large surface areas, gloves are absolutely a must, right?
What is your
You don't want it on your
preference
skin.
on the gloves? Because I've noticed nitrile, at least raw methylene
Hmm.
chloride, melts
Hmm.
right through nitrile gloves. Does not even stop,
Hmm.
just right through. And I'm like,
Yep.
I'm not gonna wear. I'll take my risk. I'm not gonna wear it because, like, I don't want raw nitrile under my skin.
Sure. Yeah. Nitrile is probably the glove of choice to use. But
Really?
rubber gloves will also work. So, like, we're talking natural rubber, like latex. Latex will have a little bit better resistance at first. They will still break down, right? Methylene chloride, it is a very powerful chlorinated solvent,
It is.
right? But yeah, so nitrile gloves are probably the easiest thing. We wouldn't recommend anything less than 6 mil. which are probably kind of the top line, sort of gloves.
That's why. Yep. I use chem gloves now. I use straight chem gloves. I know in the video I chose not to. I said it is a risk that I'm willing to take because my chem gloves are just, there's no dexterity at all. Okay, so don't use vinyl gloves, kids. Don't do that because that'll go right.
Don't use vinyl. Don't use vinyl.
That. It'll go. It melts instantly. That might be part of a video that we could do to actually show how certain solvents. These are things that people don't know. Like, if people think that aerosolizing photopolymer resin is a good idea, there are people that don't know kind of what they're up against, and it's not a hit piece. It's literally as an education thing, because I love Gloop. This would be a case where more glove, more love. Normally it's only one. You don't want to double up. That makes it worse. This is one of those cases where doubling up might actually be better off. But we've talked about chem gloves in the past. Those are absolutely my personal favorite to use for stuff like this because they're impervious.
So the proper PPE that we follow when we actually produce it is we actually will use nitrile gloves, and then we get polypropylene or high density polyethylene gloves put on over that.
Polypropylene,
and then we put then we put another nitrile glove over the top of that. So what happens is that it's we use nitrile kind of chem gloves, if you will. Just normally, but if it were to soak through the glove, it hits the polypropylene or high density polyethylene. So these are like the food service industry, right? Gloves. And, nothing's going to really go through it. And then you have another glove layer underneath. If you have any spills, right, take the glove off. Don't leave it on. That's kind of one of the worst things you can do. Just right away, you get it on yourself. Don't worry about your part. Like, come on, like, your life is more important.
Especially if you're in America. Do you want a hospital bill? Do you want a hospital bill?
And I mean, the other thing with methylene chloride is that, and this is one of the big pushes why we're trying to get away from it, and why we're so excited
That's the green
to get away
Gloop.
from it. It won't be called green Gloop, but it
should have a little leprechaun on it. I want.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. But the thing with that is that when it does absorb into your skin, a lot of times it doesn't actually evaporate right away. It actually goes right into your bloodstream, and it then is converted in your liver into carbon monoxide. And then you can get carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's, and again, inhaling it, right? You're bringing it into your body, and then it then is into your bloodstream, and then it gets converted into carbon monoxide.
So don't be stupid level. And there's not a lot of other solvent adhesives out there. I mean, everybody knows CA glue. Everyone's got the kicker for it, which I think only hurts CA glue, but whatever.
It does.
How does 3D Gloop stand out from other 3D printing adhesives? Or I should have said stick out. Damn it. I've been trying to make sticky puns all day.
Yeah. So other adhesives, they most of the time, right? You're going to be dealing with a polyurethane based adhesive or an isocyanate cyanoacrylate based adhesive. Those are kind of the two big ones. There are other ones, kind of out there, but generally speaking, these are polymers that rapidly cure in the presence of moisture, right? And that they cross-link and basically build longer polymer chains. Gloop is kind of very similar to that on the chemical level, but on the other side, we actually have the solvent, which kind of melts the plastic, it degrades it so that we can actually bond directly to the polymers itself instead of just on the substrate. Most adhesives, they form these things, mechanical bonds, right? So basically what happens is the adhesive sits on top of the surface, and you rely on the chemical, kind of interaction of, hey, this functional group likes to fit into all of these nooks and crannies, and it creates very tight, like Van der Waals force, bonds. And when it sets up, when it's polymerized, it doesn't move. It becomes very rigid.
Right.
Most adhesives are very brittle, unless you're talking about polyurethanes. They have a little bit more stretch to them. But again, it's the same principle. It's a mechanical bond. Gloop is a chemical bond. So that solvent, it degrades the polymer. It allows our functional groups to actually attach to the polymer directly. As the solvent basically evaporates, then our adhesive kicks off, right? Because it has to get down to a certain threshold for those OH ions to get in to start the reaction. And then it starts a curing process at the same time it's continuing to evaporate. So then we basically form a chemical bond that's stronger than the substrate material itself. So that's in short.
In short, he says, yes. I don't know if you all out there have used Gloop or not before, but if you haven't, you gotta go get yourself some. It's not expensive. Go get yourself a nano bottle and then regret later on that you didn't buy the big one. Although personally, I'd love a way that I could take the big one and pour it into the nano bottle. This form factor is great.
It's pretty easy. I mean, you just make sure when you hold the bottles, you just slightly.
We say that as the guy that knocked over the bottle and it spilled everywhere. So like, come on.
Okay.
Mitch 3D wants to know if there's anything that glues silicone together.
So silicone's a tough one, right? The best thing that you can do with silicone is there are adhesives out there designed for it. To my knowledge, what they do is they incorporate a solvent that will kind of expand the pores of the silicone. So silicone itself, it depends on the type of silicone. Is it cured silicone? Is it like a tin cure or a platinum cure? Because those depend on the length of the polymer chains themselves and how it all works, like the chemistry. But generally speaking, there's a solvent that reacts with that silicone and it causes it to expand, right? You can't redissolve silicone, right? It's once it's there, it's like a polyurethane. It's set, it's pretty rigid, it's pretty, structurally sound, but the solvent will expand it and it will allow other kind of polymers to get inside, and then you can cross-link those together. So these are going to be again like a polyurethane or a cyanoacrylate, and then as that solvent evaporates and as this adhesive kind of cures, it's very similar to how kind of Gloop works, right? But then you can actually bond silicone together. It's very tough. The reason why silicone sticks to silicone is because, again, it can get in between essentially the pores of the silicone and then cure into place. But yeah, that's really kind of it's tough. I don't think we'll probably make a silicone adhesive. We might, but it's a tough problem to solve.
Wait until we get like actual silicone filament or, silicone printers that don't cost 6 figures, and then maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I have liked that you guys have kind of looked at the industry and said, all right, where's this industry moving and what kind of adhesive should we look at? I love when people say, is there a Gloop for resin printing? Somebody asked that in one of the Discords I'm in the other day. I said, it's raw resin.
Yeah.
Just go use raw resin in a UV light. That's Gloop for resin. There's no need when you have the raw photopolymer that you can polymerize instantly and radically. Life is good at that point. But might there be something coming out for resin that is a little bit safer than resin?
So we've looked into it. The issue with resins there are so many different formulas, right?
Oh God, yes.
There are so many different ways to actually polymerize the resins. Most of them, are going to be epoxy based, but you have some that are not epoxy based, right? These are going to be urethane based or, siloxane based or well, that's still an epoxy.
I'm well aware of what it is. It's just marketing bullshit, and I'm willing to call it out.
Yeah. So the issue is that again, kind of going back to what I said when we launched Gloop, we wanted to make for sure the user experience was the best that it could be, and that we had the highest quality products. I don't know if we will actually release an SLA version of Gloop because there's just too many variables. That's not to say that we might not release a SLA resin of our own and a Gloop to go with it, but I don't think that we will offer just a generic SLA Gloop itself.
Wood print. Yeah. I look at what you guys do. I look at how public you've been and being open to work with people. That is something that we don't see from manufacturers of solvents, adhesives, and everything in between. because normally they're like, no, buy it or don't, we don't give a shit. And
Mm-hmm.
you have been such a part of this community to the point of where you're giving back all of this business and life advice with Pooch. And that is something that stands out to me, and it says I want to do business with somebody that does that, because ultimately I want to know the people behind the company. I'm a relationship person. I
Sure.
know a lot of business people are like that as well, where the product is the product is the product, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
I can,
Yep.
like, I buy my methylene chloride for some random eBay seller for $60 a gallon. It comes in a really crappy bottle that I pour out into a
Mm-hmm.
metal jug, right?
Yep.
I'm not doing that again because of the relationship that you have with this industry. The fact that basically everyone that I talk to on a daily basis that I know in this industry uses your product and loves it. And now I've had the opportunity to use it when it came to me as a complete and utter surprise in an alien 3D box. This has been like that discipleship that businesses look for, where people say, look, this shit's way better than you think it is, and it's worth the money. Take your dollar store super glue and throw it into a low Earth orbit. Don't do that because it's littering. But you know, it's time to look at something that makes more sense. And so,
Mm-hmm.
from a business standpoint, because I know I'm not the only one that does this, how has that
Mm-hmm.
been like? Because it kind of getting you guys have been elevated a lot by the community. What was that like for you?
I mean, it's crazy, right? I seriously, literally cannot thank the community enough for the support that they've shown us. And it's also kind of, I think, ingrained in our DNA, and I really want it to be in the company's DNA, that we continue to support these awesome projects and these awesome members of the community. We see things all the time that you guys are sharing on Twitter, like just in general, and we're blown away with how creative like everyone can be. And one of the missions that we kind of we said this in the original Kickstarter, we want to help people basically build bigger and build better. We want to open up new ways of using 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and whether it's our products or someone else's products, but it doesn't matter. We just want to help that whole thing kind of move forward. It's really weird to think, like, we go to the shows and everyone's like, oh hey, it's Gloop, and it's like, hey guys, like, this is awesome. Like, it's just it's inspiring and humbling, I'd say. And like, a lot of times when I'm doing these podcasts with Pooch, it's like, listen, I can't tell you this is how you should build a business. I'm just telling you this is how I'm doing things, and hopefully you can learn from it. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room.
No, never be.
I don't want to basically say, oh hey, here's our product, buy it if you want it, don't, I don't really care. It's like, I want to hear your thoughts, I want to hear your opinions, I want to know how to be better. And that's something that we've also really instilled into the DNA of the company is, we take every email of, hey, your product didn't work, seriously. We investigate what happened. We want to know where we can do things better. And I think that this is just the way we have to be. I wish more companies were like that. you know
I wish I had more. Like, we're working on our first kind of community project that is designed for the 3D printing industry, but I wish we had more things like that where we were able to do more reach out. But we're a custom
Mhm.
3D printing service bureau. We don't do a lot of those multi pieces like that. And it has been interesting to kind of watch it from the sidelines and see, all right, I like what he's doing
Mhm.
there. Right? When you run random sales, when, like, I DM'd you on, I was going to put it on Twitter, and I said, I can't word it in a way that's not going to sound mean, because I didn't want it to be
Uh-huh.
mean. It was funny to me that the first time I use it,
Mhm.
I knock the bottle over and I get a big bald spot on my cutting mat. And you're like, dude, if you should just see the cutting mats that we, and I DM'd it to you on Discord, because I said, let me just send it to him because I know he'll get a laugh at it. I don't want it to be
Yep.
misconstrued by the community. And your reaction was, dude, you should see the ones that we have. That is absolutely true. It melts paint off of basically anything. Let me
Mhm.
know and I'm happy to help you out. I said, no. It's absolutely my fault. I get every ounce of failure that comes with this. But it was still one of those, that's kind of what customer service is all about, right?
Uh-huh.
There wasn't a complaint there. It was really just to share a funny story, and then
Yep.
to share what it was like to
Mhm.
use the product for the first time. as someone that
Mhm.
has never used it, as someone that, has used its carrier, the methylene chloride, all the time, literally have
Mhm.
jugs of it, um, and finally said, yeah, I gotta somehow use what I have left. But I will not be buying more of it,
Uh,
because Gloop is sincerely the right product. Um,
Thank you so much for your support. Like that
yeah,
again, that means so much. Like that's awesome. Thank you.
well, the way, I guess, because I know some of the science behind it, it helps me better understand
Mhm.
it. I do always see it. There's particulate that falls to the bottom of this, and I've always wondered if that's
Mhm.
just like dissolved filament or dissolved raw polymer. I'm almost positive that it might be something related to that, but I don't think you're going to be able to
so
talk about the 11 herbs and spices
so
too much.
I can't say too much about it, but yeah, so you're supposed to shake up Gloop right before you use it. That's on the bottles it's probably too small, but
What is
our
a
bigger
nano
bottles
Gloop?
it says shake, it says shake well right before using somewhere on there. But anyways, the whole point is that when we actually produce this, right, there's a chemical reaction that takes place. That chemical reaction does produce some byproducts. To not deal with a whole lot of technically what we'd call chemical waste, what we want to do is try and minimize that. So these are side reaction products that don't really add anything to Gloop itself, but it just we just keep it in there. And so it doesn't really cause any issues per se. Just it's a way for us to help keep the cost a little bit lower too, because if we were to filter it out, make it ultra pure, right, that's a whole extra step, and then we have the waste of that product that then has to go
Yep.
off to an incinerator and everything else. Whereas again, if this doesn't actually negatively impact the product and it's not toxic or harmful in any way, it doesn't matter. It can stay in the product. That's why also sometimes you'll see some Gloop, like I said, each batch we run is always going to be a little bit different. Some Gloop actually has a little bit different color than other Gloops. It's just again the process. We try our best to control it as best as we can, but with chemical reactions, and again a bootstrap company, like we don't have the best equipment that money can buy.
And that's totally fair, right? I don't think people are going
Hmm.
to expect you to run a multi-billion-dollar operation with 100
Hmm.
grand. Well, some people might, but we
Yep.
don't like them. Um, we've gotten a Dov in the comments saying, "Is it just me or does 3D Gloop smell bad?" I said, "Don't smell it. The fumes are harmful." He said, I get an old one and I just don't use it due to the smell. It stinks my office." And we talked about this earlier, that having good ventilation is kind of important. Make sure you have the
Hmm.
bottle sealed really well. But that carrier, the methylene chloride, because when I opened, I'm like, oh, whoa, that's methylene chloride. I didn't read it. Like,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
that's methylene chloride. I can smell that. I know that smell. That, like, just
Hmm.
kind of burns the hairs in your nose a little bit.
Hmm.
Like, oh, God, that's methylene chloride. So,
Yep.
sit back and use it at an arm's distance and you should be okay.
Yeah, and so some people have more of an issue with it than others.
Yeah.
We will say that some people, some people are like, "Oh yeah, I love the smell of it," and it's just like, okay, well,
Uh,
don't go huffing it.
uh,
But there are other people that are like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't like that smell," and it's yeah, it's something to be mindful of, and we do know that a lot of people have issues with it. Again, it's all about ventilation. If you have a fan blowing and you have a window open, you really
you'll be
can't
fine.
smell it when you're
Yeah, you'll be
you
fine.
know
Especially if you
so
have resin 3D printers, it's no worse
mm,
than a engineering grade resin. And Gloop, because of the way that it works, the bond is actually stronger than the main part because it's actually
mhm.
melting those layers together. I have considered, maybe we turn this into a video, but coating the entire outside surface of a part in
Mhm.
Gloop to see if there is a noticeable change in its strength, because it should
We've
get much stronger, right?
so you would think. Unfortunately, it doesn't add too much strength.
No kidding.
Around 3 to 5%. We've actually tested it. The reason why is there's so many additional variables when you're actually printing. And also when you take into the consideration of actually applying it onto the surface, the reaction time and how much of the actual polymer the solvent is dissolving before it actually basically boils away, evaporates away. And the adhesive, when it cures, yes, it adds a little bit of strength, but it's nowhere near as strong as people would think it would be, right? We've done some demos, and yes, it does help in some cases. Where it does help is let's say you've printed something with a couple of walls and it really needed to be a little bit more, and brushing it on where you're starting to see delamination or the print starting to break apart kind of helps re-solidify that area and strengthen it over the course of the area. So
I mean, I've shown that it's way stronger, but you know,
yeah,
that's
I
just
mean,
like practical testing. And Joe Telling talks about this too, because
yeah.
you guys have been dropping the giveaways on his live streams a lot, which is awesome. Thank you for supporting the community like that. But he talked about he did a video where he made chain links, used
Uh-huh.
Gloop to stick it together, and he and his wife
Mm-hmm.
sat on it and
Yep.
it broke, but it wasn't at the glue bond. And I think
Uh-huh.
maybe that plays into there's a lot of freaking variables like infill,
Mm-hmm.
temperature, that plays so much more into the strength of your 3D printed part than
Yep.
something else would.
Yeah, and again, it's so we don't have a ton of time to go through and do a lot of testing. Like, okay, hey, this is how you would apply it to get the best possible, sort of like, surface finish so that you can increase the strength of the part, right? Because it also depends on the type of forces going through the part, right? So let's say you have your layers stacked on top of each other. If you brush Gloop onto those layers, it's gonna break at the layers, right? And the Gloop doesn't really fuse anything more than the top surface layer. And again, it will add a little bit of strength, but it's nowhere near as much as people think it would when you're using it as like a coating. Again, that's our testing, and we try to be methodical in it, but there are absolutely ways in which if you apply it really heavy and you keep reapplying it and reapplying it, you might get better results.
Right.
There's just, and we actually encourage people to experiment too and share. Like there are some really cool emails that we get all the time, like one that we're even exploring right now, where a guy was taking and adding graphite powder to the Gloop and using
Ooh.
it as a coating, and then sanding the coating and then electroplating. It apparently works really well. And this is something we're testing right now. Like, if you add 10% apparently graphite powder to Gloop and you brush it on the surface of a part, and then after it dries, you sand it slightly, you can then electroplate.
No
That's pretty
kidding.
cool to me.
That's pretty cool to me too. And
um,
something that
yeah.
something that has made me curious, and I just had to quickly peruse the FAQ to verify that it's not on there. Usage. So the FAQ kind of
Mhm.
talks about using it as a build plate adhesive, which I knew that
Mhm.
it could do,
That
but
was a
I've
very long time ago.
hence the website update. Got it. Is this
Yep.
stuff really good as build plate adhesive?
So on glass, sure.
Yeah.
I would not recommend it on a
No, no,
PEI
no.
or anything like that. But yeah,
Got a
so
big printer with a
on
big glass bed up there.
yeah. So our claim to fame, like that was kind of the funny statement that we'd say, was that with our ABS product, you can print ABS on a room temperature build platform. No warping or no
Shit.
curling. Now, just because you can
Doesn't mean you
does not
should.
mean you should.
Could break the glass as the part's warping. So
So yeah.
what are the best practices for gluing two parts together? Right? It because that
Mhm.
is basically what everyone is using it for at this point. What are your
Yep.
best practices for that?
So yeah, it kind of changes, and this is where we really need to update our FAQ again. Hence the whole change for the website. So there's we would call kind of small joints, or like we'd call them quick joints or something like that, where you're taking something like less than, let's say, a square inch, and you're going to join something together. And if you don't really care about the strength, you can apply the Gloop just to the one surface and then push it together. The biggest thing is that you want a little bit of squeeze out, because then you know that the surfaces, once you've made that bond, are fully wetted. Gloop only works is if it touches wet, right? If it touches after it's starting to form a skin, that polymer has started to set up. It's no longer going to bond to the substrate. So you can apply it to one surface and push together pretty quickly. You're going to get a slightly weaker bond. If you're going for a strong bond, you need to apply it to both surfaces. We say kind of work it in a little bit. So you can take your brush, you can kind of dab the surface a little bit, move it around, and then just go back and forth to both surfaces. Make sure you keep your brush wet, dip it in the bottle, pull it out, apply again a little bit, and then make that bond, push them together and hold for a little bit. It'll take 30 seconds, maybe a minute, right? But once that happens, it's going to set up pretty quick.
Right.
It's not as fast as super glue and a kicker, but the bond is going to be much stronger. So, again, trade-off here. Wait for the squeeze out to happen. Leave the squeeze out. Don't wipe it. You're going to ruin the surface finish. If you want to protect your surface finish, wrap some tape around it. Capped on tape is the best kind of tape because it's not going to, react with the solvent. But that's expensive. You can take loose painter's tape or frog tape or whatever, wrap it around your joint, and that way you're not going to get any dribbles or squeeze out. And then wait for it to cure, and then pull the tape off and use a sharp blade and cut the squeeze out off. The bond will basically disappear. If you do it, where you're not like slathering it on everywhere. If you're doing large surface areas, so this is all kind of for small stuff, right? If you're doing large surface areas, you don't need to cover the whole area. We've had customers time and time again try to cover like a 6 square inch area.
It'll evaporate
or larger.
You can finish it.
You can't. Yeah, it's not practical. It's so we just recommend either the corners or the perimeter, and you technically only have to do one surface. Again, if we're talking about a really large surface area and you're worried about strength, Gloop isn't for you. Right? Your design needs to be reconsidered, or you can use other mechanisms for holding it together. There should never be a point in time where you're going to have a really large surface area that you need to bond together and it needs a ridiculous amount of strength. Right?
I want to reiterate that. If you're having a part that is a massive area that you need to glue together, go back to the drawing board and don't use Gloop. Right. It is. It won't work.
Yeah.
Or it won't, unless you're like the Flash. I have always done coat both surfaces, similar like a tack glue, because it is there's a solvent portion to it that'll soften both of them. I can push them together. I will get some of the raw plastic squeeze out. And again, we'll just go through and we'll trim with a hobby knife when it all cures. Is that the same deal with Gloop, that you can do that as well?
Basically same thing. Yep. That's it. And again, you don't have to do both surfaces if you're not that concerned about the strength of that bond, right? You can get away with just coating one surface and pushing it together. If you coat both surfaces, you're going to have a better bond, generally speaking, right? Again, there's variables there. So
okay. Because that's usage is, of course, always something that's a little troublesome for some people, right? And how do I apply this stuff? Because that would, I'll have to make a video on that. That'd be an easy gimme Wednesday video. How do you use 3D? How do you use 3D Gloop and other 3D solvents and glues and that kind of thing? How to do proper applications? Because again, like, those are questions that people have. I like that, because the advent of not having to cover the whole surface, right? People don't always think about that, right? A lot of us say, I just need to cover the whole damn thing, all of it, every square millimeter needs to be covered. And that's not the truth, right?
Yeah. I mean, just even a little, even if you have a 1 square inch part, just a little dab, that's all you really need. Just as long as, it's got a nice wet surface to it and you push it together, that bond is going to be ridiculously strong.
We find with Gloop, if it's a larger part, put a big drop in the middle, put it together, twist it, move it a little bit.
There you go.
Align it back up. Never. It's never. And if you screwed it up, you're reprinting. Because it's never coming apart. Never coming apart. This is really interesting. So is there anything that you can share with us that's coming in the future?
Well,
I
yeah,
have
so
to ask these questions.
I kind of hinted at it, right? So we are actively working on releasing the next version of Gloop for PLA, right? And it is going to be really cool, because gone is the whole, chlorinated solvent, and it's just as strong. And it's all because, we worked with some really smart people. I can't say who, but they're a very large company. And, they're like, hey, like, Gloop, we want to work with you. Like, let's build something awesome together. And it's going to be really awesome. It'll be, I can't say when it's going to launch because there's a lot of other things we still have to work on, like regulatory stuff, MSDS, that sort of, testing. But we're getting much closer, and it is something that's coming because, again, so many people are like, oh, well, how is Gloop different than, Weld On, or, oh, it's just this or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. If you want to go do that, that's fine. But my vision, our vision, for the company, Andrew and I, we wanted to really be kind of a powerhouse in the 3D printing, additive manufacturing for all things sticky. That includes coatings, that includes, aerosols, that includes adhesives, like just tons of stuff. Maybe even materials, right? So lots of cool things in the pipeline. Being a bootstrap company, means that we do have limited access to resources. We absolutely probably could go out and raise several $1,000,000, from equity investors. We wouldn't have to give away tons of the company, right? Because of where we are, but still at the same time, it's like, well, now I'm giving up control and giving up a portion of a voice. And that means that, now my fiduciary responsibility isn't to the customers, it's to the investors. And I think that really shifts the dynamic, because right now I put the customer first. The customer is what got us here. The customer is the reason why we're a business. They have to come number one,
Yeah.
not our investors, not our responsibility to produce a profit. Right. That's the way that I look at it. Yes, we're a business. We still have to produce a profit in order to pay me, to pay the team, to pay everything else. But I think greater than that, the reason why we've seen the success we've seen is because we consistently try to put the customer first and call it out when we've screwed up, and when we've done something wrong. So
That's important, right? Admitting fault. No one is infallible. And being able to say, yep, you're right, I had a mistake.
Yep.
Let's look at how do we solve it and how do we move forward from it. That is incredibly valuable. It's a great business lesson as well. The customer is not always right, but don't always assume they're wrong.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
If someone tries to do a chargeback from 11 months ago, they're being an asshole. They're not, and they haven't contacted you, they're just being an asshole. That is when the customer is wrong. Right.
Yeah.
But if they say, I'm having an issue with this, or it's spilled in shipping, something happened, open your ears, listen to what your customers have to say, because ultimately they are the ones that are going to either champion you or help you dig your own grave.
Yep.
Right. And that's the one thing that I've seen from this industry. Yeah. Can I go buy another gallon of methylene chloride for $60? Yep. And it's going to be a lot cheaper than a gallon of Gloop. But the difference is I can support a company that I know. I'm literally talk to the owner one-on-one. We're doing it right now. I like him. He's not a complete and utter goof. I've asked him questions that if he was a goof, he wouldn't have been able to answer. Right. So you've passed the acid test. Right. And I think for a lot of people, you passed this months ago. For me, I always like to have one-on-ones with people, and I can say, hey, come on the podcast and let's talk about what you do and how you do it. And at the same time, I'm assessing, do I like how you're running your company? Because if I'm going to align myself and our channel and my company with your products, like it's the reason we are 100% printed solid filament, other than colors they don't have. Dave, make some damn Starry Night, copy Atomic Starry Night. I want to keep buying that, but I don't. I would love to buy it directly from you.
We need Dave to bring back the polyalchemy potion purple.
We just need polyalchemy elixirs in general. Please pop a printed solid. Notice us. I'm like over here saying, oh shit, I want to print this in Elixir. Like literally, oh, other way. My Emerald City Elixir is on the printer back there. I'm like, there's a part that I printed in. I'm like, all right, it's got to work the first time because I only have one spool of this, and that's a finite amount until Dave goes back into production. I would love to see a gloop. Love to see a gloop that is specifically designed for silks that won't damage them. Which that's going to be the hard part, right? Gluing them's easy. Hilariously, super glue does not stick well to silks. Do you know what that other polymer is that makes the silk silky?
It's a triglyceride fat.
I thought it was
literally a fat.
It's literally fat.
It's literally a triglyceride fat.
And that's why shit doesn't stick to it.
Yeah, that's why it has this weird. Yeah, it's basically like, yeah, it's just it's. I mean, most everything, right? So in chemistry, right, we have these things called polymers, right? And polymers have these general, kind of, I call them structures or properties to them. Polymers and proteins, right? Proteins are again a very kind of another kind of chain, if you will. And fats, right? Fats are these protein chains that are built up, but you have these natural polymers, right? Which are again just like these individual little building blocks, and most of them are either a protein based or just a generic like benzene or hexane ring or whatever it might be, and you just link them together and you form these molecules, these compounds. And yeah, so we a lot of times what silks are using or their additives, they're like fatty acids, if you will. There could be other things, right? But a lot of times they're that. Sometimes they're going to be thermoplastic elastomers. Some of them are going to be like a shiny kind of thermoplastic waxy elastomer. But again, most of these waxy elastomers are like oil fins or something like that, polyfins, which are very similar to fatty acids.
That they are. I gotta have you on where we just do something where we just talk chemistry the whole time. I hate chemistry and I'm really bad at it, but I want to learn more about the chemistry of the materials themselves, because like that's an important thing to know. And silk is becoming more popular, right? Especially the rainbow silk. I've got enough of it here. Because it looks great in time lapses and people love the way it looks and it catches people. How'd you do that? It's the filament. It wasn't me. And having a good way to bond that stuff together without causing adverse color reactions would be amazing. Now, I don't know if because, and I'm certain it's the methylene chloride doing it, right? I don't know if the green gloop, if you will, is going to solve that problem or what it's going to do, but I am incredibly curious to see as that comes onto the market.
Something we should probably test. But yeah, there might be something cool there.
Buddy, there's 96 spools behind me, and there's about another 60 that you can't see.
Okay.
I got you. We have 37 printers now. We just bought a few more. 37 printers now. Whatever you need, I got you. Okay, 11 of them are resin. One of them is an Objet 30 Alaris, which we haven't shown off yet. That's a polyjet printer.
We have one of those. We literally have one. We've used it once.
Yeah, see, the person that gave it to me said, I don't use it. So it's been put into glacial storage, so it's full of cleaning fluid. He's like, if you want to get it back up and running, go ahead. It worked when I turned it off and put it into storage. But if not, I want to see you do an autopsy on your YouTube channel of it.
Okay.
So it came to me completely for free, but they're freaking heavy.
They are very heavy and they're very temperamental, and the resin is very expensive if you want to use official resin.
If you want to use official resin.
If you don't want to use official resin, you need a very low viscosity resin.
Yep.
So,
something tells me you might know a thing or two about that. We should have a talk off camera about that.
Probably.
Yeah. Because like I'm no stranger to low viscosity materials, right? I still have a sandstone printer if somebody wants to buy it. We have two and I'm selling one of them. And I will include a 6-month warranty, which is something nobody else will do. And I'll teach you how to service it. But, doing polyjet stuff is interesting. And I've always wanted to compare it to the photopolymer SLA, MSLA style machines. But yeah, we've got a ton of machines here, everything from the Prusas to Enders, and one that definitely needs to be rewired, definitely not because of a rodent in my garage.
Oh.
Hey, it's a video on how to rewire a 3D printer, okay? The reason is irrelevant. It just has to happen. Thankfully, it wasn't a Prusa. It was it was a garbage Ender 3 that I had on the floor, and that rodent will hopefully be dispatched soon. But the goal for us is to really look at highlighting some cool things in the industry here. That's what we do with the Making Awesome podcast. And I think that Gloop really embodies what Making Awesome really is. You found a pain point from a buddy of yours, and you said, wait a minute, I can solve this. You solved it, and you're like, wait a minute, other people would want this too. You did a Kickstarter. You won a few competitions that, kind of helped you get that initial capital. And you went to Murph on a whim and saw stardom overnight when your Kickstarter was overfunded. And your story is quite literally this one specifically. I know some of the other ones were not so much the American dream, but this one sounds a lot more like the American dream that you'd want, right?
Yep.
Who knew that it would be covered in sticky solvent?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, like, again, the reason why we're here is because of this awesome community. We wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them. And we also were incredibly lucky. Right place, right time, right set of formulas, right set of skills, whatever. And the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice that I can give to anyone who's wanting to do this, like on that making the money, it just is just keep pushing forward and keep going back and fighting another day. You won't accomplish anything unless you get up off the couch and you go do it, right? And the first startup I had, it didn't work out. It did not work out in my favor. This one, I don't know how it's going to go. Right now it's going great, and I'm excited, and I'm really looking forward to see where things are going to go. I know the other Andrew's super excited. Like, we're a great team. We keep pushing forward, and we love this community. So hopefully, we keep moving forward. If not, we'll figure out again how to come back, do something else.
I think you guys have got something, right? There are no other players in this market outside of people like me that just buy the raw chemical because we didn't know you existed. Super glue is not in even the same universe realistically. That's a that's an adhesive versus a chemical bond. So yeah, you all kind of have when we look at a blue ocean, the book that I honestly can't stand because it made a lot of sense in the 70s. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense today. Like, Kevin Harrington's a friend, and he's kind of talked about his success. And he said the one big thing about his success is that he did it at the right time. He got into As Seen on TV before commercials existed. He invented the commercial, right? The man got really lucky. And I love that you state that, right? A lot of where you're at and how you've gotten there is kind of just dumb luck. Yes, there's been formulas that have worked out perfectly, but you also have to get really, really lucky. And it's why I love hearing your talks with Pooch, because I don't think I make it much of a secret that it's been a rough struggle for us the past couple of years. We've run a very successful nonprofit for a couple of years now, is what I tell people. And it is tough when you're trudging through the mud every day, when you realize the less time I work, the less it costs the business. But if I work less, the business doesn't move forward as quickly. And sometimes you just get really, really unlucky. We lost a big contract because of the pandemic. I can't control that. We got unlucky there. So we're looking to see when is the next place that we can, rub the 4-leaf clover and hope for the best. But it is always interesting to see that, it is skill. There's a fair bit of skill involved. But if it wasn't for the luck, the skill doesn't matter at all.
Exactly. Yeah. You just got to keep coming up and just playing that lottery, right? Day in and day out.
Yeah, I think Pooch has said it. I've said it as well, that, you know, rent for a small business is due every second, and you don't have the money to pay it. You pay it with your sweat. Make
Mm-hmm.
it freaking work. And that's why Maker That Money is just,
Mm-hmm.
damn it, it's a good one. It's a really good one. And I think that you guys have some really poignant topics that you discuss, and I'm looking forward to hearing more and maybe being a guest one day. I think that'd be fun. Kind of
That would be.
talk about what it's like to lose $250,000 take or pay contract to a virus that you can't control, that you signed in February of that year. So
man.
yeah. Oh yeah. It was tough, but you know, there's a lot of learning experiences of, don't put all your eggs in one basket. The world's largest defense contractor was probably a good basket to put your eggs in, but who saw, look, I had 6 years of business school. They never taught you to prepare for a global pandemic. They do now. But they didn't before.
Yeah, they do.
They didn't before. They do now. And I, you know, recently I got to return to my alma mater, kind of talk to them, look at hiring people there. And I got to talk to some of my old professors. And I said, so how's everything changed? I said, our textbooks have updated some. I said, yeah, I bet they have. And we just had a good talk about it. And I think the big thing about business, and let me know if you agree on this, is it's just about keeping your head down, poking up for air every now and then, ask for help when you need it, but always making sure you're moving in a direction that you want to see the business move, and listen to your freaking customers. Because they're the ones that know you from the outside. You don't know yourself that well from the outside.
No, you might have a perception, right, of yourself, but it's wrong. It's always wrong.
I know what I look like, right? I mean, there's a camera right there. I know what I look like. And I know that most people here on the YouTube channel think, oh, he's really, you know, here to help people. But if you have a meeting with me, I am very straightforward with you. If I have a problem with your idea, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to tell it to you. And if you don't like that kind of an attitude, then you're not a good customer, because you're either in it to make money or you're in it because you love it. And if you're both, that's fine. But then you need to separate the emotion from the business side of it. A lot of our clients seem to enjoy it, though, right? I will be your devil's advocate when your friends and family simply won't, because ultimately you're going to pay me money to do something for you. And if you don't know it, then you're wasting your money with me. And I could easily take your money and send you on your way.
Yeah.
But it's also about educating the customer at the same time. And that's why I'm glad that you guys have such a good website. Your bottles, even the Nano, which I love, says, same great Gloop, just using extremely tiny atoms. And where is it on here? It's 10 to the -9th, right?
Yep,
it's
that's
on
Nano.
There. I forget. It might be on the bag. It might be.
It's on the bag, I think.
Yeah. Like, I love those little jokes, because I think that kind of shows who you all are at 3D Gloop. I am so curious to see when new things come out. If there's any way that we can get stuff ahead of time to test and have videos for, you know, I'm down for that.
All right.
Because I firmly believe that you guys have a really good thing going. I don't think, as long as you continue on this path, that you're going to fail. I really do believe you guys have something really good going on here. And I'm excited to see what the next thing that I can stick to the next thing is going to be.
Yep. It's some crazy stuff, let me tell you. Like, oh yeah, I wish there's so much cool stuff that we've worked on that I wish I could share. All I can say is that just keep your eye out. We've been up to stuff, right? You know, I know we haven't released a new product since 2019. We've been up to stuff. It's for good reason, right? Again, we want to make sure.
You said you've been releasing new products every couple of months. It's just new formulas.
Well, yeah, it's just new formulas. Yeah. So, you know, just hang in there. You know, there's some really cool stuff in the works.
Just don't new Coke us.
It's been a grind.
Right? Don't do a new Coke. Don't do that.
No. That's actually, it's funny you bring that up, because that's literally the first thing that I said when we were talking about bringing out the new formula. I'm like, we can't do a Coke.
New Coke was always to go after Pepsi's clear thing, and it was deliberately made terrible to ruin people's looks at Pepsi. And that is Honestly, that's just brilliant. Somebody in that marketing
It
department
was,
was not paid enough money. But don't do that
yeah.
because you have no competition.
Yeah.
Well, no
Oh
real
man.
competition. People give you competition that doesn't firmly exist. Real quick,
Hmm.
John Stern says, can something be done with microspheres containing adhesive for safety?
Microspheres. There might be something there. We've looked at these. So there's these things called nanopolymers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't confuse that with like nanopolymer adhesive. Different thing. So nanopolymers are essentially very small building blocks of these bigger, larger polymers. It is possible to roll them up into spheres. It is possible to have a carrier in them. We've looked at some interesting things. I wouldn't rule it out, but there might be something there. I know that there are some really cool things that we're working on in the lab that deal with natural based polymers that are nanocrystals. But we're doing it for material strength and other material properties instead of safety. But there might be something there.
Like it.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a non-answer, but yeah, it's something
Well,
interesting to
it's
look
not a
into.
non-answer. It's I need more time, right? Could it
Hmm.
happen? Yeah, it
Yeah.
probably could, but I'm gonna need some more time. Um,
Hmm.
he's saying he was thinking the plastic spheres used in cosmetics. Oh,
Oh.
no,
Hmm.
no, because they're illegal in like quite a few states. You don't want to touch that kind of stuff with a 10-foot
Yeah.
pole. I was on your kick of could we put something inside of a sphere like a dissolvable sphere that when cracked
Hmm.
open catalyzed something like that's where my mind
Hmm.
went, not
Hmm.
like microplastics. Sure,
Hmm.
I guess you could, but
Hmm.
why? It would
Yeah.
dissolve.
Yeah, there was a project we were working on, and we're still doing it. It was for gap filling, and it came with kind of this polymer. It was microplastics, kind of like those microspheres, but this was just a ground polymer, very finely ground. And you would mix it with you'd take two chemicals, you'd draw it into a syringe, you'd see a physical color change happen in the syringe, and then you'd squirt it onto this polymer. So it was basically a tertiary reaction,
Huh.
and it would solidify this polymer. We sent it out to a few customers. The problem was it was just too much to do, right? But it worked really well in that you had these microplastics that were essentially the building blocks that all of this other wet polymer would react with, and form these long polymer chains. And it worked really well for gap filling, but practically speaking, the user experience was just god awful, right? So there are absolutely, I believe, things to do with kind of nanopolymers or nanocrystals, or microcrystalline structures. We've explored them. I don't know how well they're going to work with our technology,
It's
but
tough.
yeah, I mean there could be interesting things. I won't rule it out.
Yeah, this is one of those cases of there's a lot of opportunity, and if
Hmm.
you chase the dragon of one thing, you're gonna miss the path to success, right?
Hmm.
And I've talked with Pooch about it, and I feel like there's only a Sith deals in absolutes. I'm gonna deal in an absolute. The vast majority of makers have a relatively hardcore value of ADHD, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The amount
yeah.
that we want to say, okay, I got it. But whoa, 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 what if we did this? 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 And then there's 16 projects that are 80% of the way done, and nobody references them anymore because we don't want to talk about it.
Hmm.
That is what this industry was founded upon.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
a
Yep.
prerequisite for being a maker is a fair bit of ADHD. But
Yes.
and as a business, you have to be able to look through that and say, all right, let's weed through the chaff and get to the cream that rises to the top.
Yep.
And
Eh,
how do you get that off without disturbing all the crap below it?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm very bad about it. Like I have that SOS, where the shiny object syndrome, right? Where like, oh hey, I'm gonna go chase this thing, and that's where the other Andrew comes in real helpful. He's like, no, you're not. We got to go do this.
I need another Grant. Well, I have an identical twin, but he's not really involved with the business all that much. He does our IT stuff. So I don't want another one of me. I already have that. I need an accountability buddy.
Yep,
Can we start a business accountability thing where we talk about the things that we want to do, and there's one person there who says no, just slaps you with a ruler.
No.
I just
Yep. Yeah, and then I'm like, but all of these things, and he's like, no. But if you can prove this thing, then maybe.
It has to be somebody outside the industry, because if all of a sudden this shiny is something that's really cool, they got to be able to knock you back and say, finish your work first, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Kind of deal, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Andrew, this has been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you want to, do you want to end off on for people?
No, I mean, thank you for having me. This has been cool. Maybe in the future we'll get one where we're both here, or you can do the other Andrew, if you're interested in that. So,
that'd be fun, but maybe a little complicated.
Yeah.
I'd have to have your names as your last names on the stream for OBS rather than Andrew and Andrew. And then do I invite my video editor who's also named Andrew for that one too?
I
think so.
We actually have a rule in our company that we're only allowed to hire Andrews. Like everyone's got to be named Andrew. If you're not, you have to be willing to change your name.
Well, then we have to bring on Andrew Sink. Who are some of the other Andrews in the industry? It's an all-Andrew podcast. Welcome to the Fine Andrews, where we're talking about Andrew things. No. Seriously, I greatly appreciate it. You are a blast to hang out with, and I will say, customer service A friggin' plus. I don't remember when I DM'd you, but it was not early. It was
I remember.
Early. And you got back to me, and I'm like, oh shit, he's awake. I figured you'd see it in the morning.
Well, as a small business owner, right? You're always awake. Like there's a million things keeping you up at night. So.
Wait, you're saying you don't sleep a good 8 hours every single night?
Oh man.
What is sleep? What is
it?
I'm trying to see. All right, let me see. I've got Can Discord tell me. No, it can't easily. I was gonna say when did I send it to you? It was on Valentine's. Messaged you on Valentine's Day with a failure. Okay, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Anyways, Andrew, thank you so much. I appreciate your time here, man. Do you know my outro? Most people don't, but do you know my outro?
I don't. No.
This has been season 2, episode 28 of the Making Awesome podcast with the gloopiest of gloopers, Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.